It's time for the opening crack, the sideshow to the D&D show we normally do, where we taste and rank some epic brews. How we doing this evening, fellas?
This is weird. We're not in the basement.
Oh, somebody finally let us out. That's what happened.
We've left the dungeon.
Or Melissa kicked us out. One of the two happened. I don't know which
No one's
yet.
going to recognize this episode. Not the basement. No actual crack. Like,
What are we doing?
yeah, what is
I
this?
might have grabbed a can for you and just.
That's fine. It's fine. But with that said, no crack tonight because we're actually on location for the first time for the opening crack. We are at First Street Brewing in Hastings, Nebraska. And joining us for the episode today is the owner and brewmaster for First Street Brewing, Nathan Haft, and fellow D&D player and dungeon master, Tony Cavan. We'll get to how Tony connects to all this here in a little bit, but he's going to be a huge part of the show. You just wait. It's going to be awesome. So we do have a beer with us, Nathan. So if you want to introduce the beer a little bit, and we'll chat about that.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a sneak preview for you guys because this beer probably won't be fully released until September. We have done this beer in the past, but it's our Assumption Saison. If you haven't noticed with our other beers, we tend to name things after roads around Hastings and Assumption Road. So the Assumption Saison, obviously Belgian style, made with ginger and chamomile in it. Ooh. Yeah, it was one of those things where just kind of wanted to pull back to kind of the agricultural roots of the style and just do something interesting with a different herbal approach.
Sure.
And it's been one of my favorites ever since I first brewed it in my garage. Sure. And we bring it back every once in a while. It's been gone for probably 2 years now or a little more. So we're just bringing it back. It's 6.8% in alcohol and just real easy drinker with a nice sort of herbal up front and then a slight funkiness in the finish that's pretty indicative of a Belgian beer.
Sure. I mean, in terms of beers that we've tried on the show, like we've had both ends of the spectrum. We've gone from pickle beers that are, somebody threw, brine in a lager and called it a pickle beer, and you're like, oh, this is disgusting. We've been up to like whiskey barrel aged double IPAs and things like that. This one is very good. I agree with like your easy drinking on this because it just like right off the top of my head, if I'm thinking of Saison, like I'm automatically thinking, just in terms of our challenge rating, for those of you out there that have listened before, it's like it's going to be up toward the other end, and then you take that drink and you're like, God, this is a beautiful beer.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I enjoy it. We enjoy making it. I am particularly a big fan of Belgian-style beers. A lot of brewers would call them yeast-driven beers because a lot of your flavor is coming from the yeast that's used in brewing it. I just think they're beautiful beers. And we're actually going to be doing a sort of a celebration of them here at the brewery. October 19th, we're doing an event for the first time ever called the Farmhouse Fete. And it's all about Belgian-style beers. We'll have us, Lost Way, Thunderhead, and Upper Room all doing Belgian beers. And the idea is, for me, when people try to make a Nebraska, and I'm doing air quotes, perfect for when you're on the radio, when they try to make a Nebraska beer, they generally are going to make some kind of lager or some kind of clone of Busch Light or something. And to me, I would really love to see Nebraskan brewers embrace Belgian styles, Saison or the farmhouse styles as they're known, as something that we can make our own, just because we're an agricultural state.
Sure.
These beers. Like, not every Saison is a farmhouse ale, every Saison is a farmhouse ale, but not every farmhouse ale is a Saison.
Sure.
There's beer to guards, other things like that. But those styles came out of agriculture. The Saison was named so because of the seasonal workers. It was what the farmers would brew for the workers because the water wasn't potable.
Sure.
Now, back then, it was like 3%. And, of course, we had to change that.
Right? We fix that.
Yeah, like 3% now. 6.8, that's much better. So it's something that we're trying to do. I can tell you at the Farmhouse Fete, I know at least Upper Room, and I'm hoping Lost Way and Thunderhead will do it as well. Michael and I are both we're making an attempt at doing a Nebraska farmhouse ale. The only requirement I put on it was 20% corn in the grist, because that's what we grow a lot of here, And all that's going to do is probably thin the beer out a little bit and give it a little bit drier profile, which for a Saison is perfect. You know, if you think about what somebody working out in the fields is going to drink, something that's crisp and dry on the finish is going to be really nice on a hot day, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
So he and I are both doing that. I'm hoping the others will jump in on it as well. I would love to see it become a trend with Nebraska brewers that we could make it a style indicative of our state, because we are an agricultural state.
Sure. I love that.
Yeah. So, yeah, and then the Saison, you know, this Assumption Saison is just pretty. Yeah. It has that chamomile gives it a round kind of fruit flavor. The ginger gives it a bit of spice. And then, if you notice it or not, the yeast of a Saison typically gives it almost like a bubblegum overtone.
Yep.
I love how balanced it is, because even though the ginger's in there, there's a little spice, but it's not a bite.
Right.
Like I can't feel it on the back of my tongue, and sometimes that gets stuck there.
Yeah.
This doesn't.
But there's just enough of it there that you do notice it and appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what we really wanted. We really tried to go for like almost a touch of heat from the ginger, but just enough to like let you know ginger's there.
Yeah. Is chamomile like a common beer herb?
I don't think a lot of people use it. No.
Tea.
Yeah. Okay, I was trying to think of where
It's a
I
flower.
get chamomile from. Yeah.
Chamomile tea. I have seen in the past several brewers in Nebraska do hibiscus saisons, which are very pretty as well. I just really liked the interaction between chamomile and the yeast that's used for this. Just because chamomile, like if you've ever had chamomile tea, it has almost like a round apple kind of flavor.
Sure. Yeah.
And I thought that fit well with the yeast that sits in this beer. So
It's a little bit smoother of a flavor too. It doesn't quite punch you as much as like a hibiscus would.
yeah.
All right, so thank you. This is an excellent beer, and we'll come back around to this here in a little bit. But talk a little bit about like First Street in the community of Hastings, because you guys have done a great job of bringing the community together, probably more so than any other place in town in a lot of ways.
You know, we try. I've said this quote before, and I think I actually said it to you guys last time we were here. As a brewery, obviously our goal is always to make the best beers we can. But above and beyond that, our purpose is to build community. So we're always looking for ways to pull people together over a great beverage. Whether it's doing a concert in the back here, we just had a bags tournament out on the street. We actually partnered with the First United Methodist Church, where they had a bags tournament out front. It was so much fun. Whole families just hanging out, having a good time. We've done outdoor concerts. We've got a barbecue festival coming up. It's just all about creating opportunity for people to come together.
Sure.
And luckily, the city has really been behind the idea, and they're actually working really hard to make more and more of the spaces downtown into areas where people can just come and be. You know, like they're trying to, our street here in front of the brewery, they're trying to turn it into an entertainment district to where it makes it as easy as possible for us to close down the ends of the streets, turn it into pedestrian only, and open things up so people can just hang out and have a good time.
Right. Yep.
And that's, we've been here 8 years now. It'll be 8 years in October.
That's crazy. I can't believe that, but that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's an ongoing thing for us. Always looking for ways to bring people together. There's nothing we can't solve over a good beer.
Sure, absolutely.
True.
So, and you can do lots of things. So you've done the bags tournament, Do the Brew is out here, which is our local beer festival that happens in Hastings.
Husker volleyball.
Husker volleyball is here.
Yep.
You have a chapter of the American Outlaws here,
Yep.
I believe, for watching the United States national soccer teams, men's and women's. You can come down here and watch them. But
0.5K.
yes,
oh,
the
yeah.
0.5K, yes.
One of my personal favorites.
Our 0.5K, so real quick how that came about. We had an employee named Brittany who moved away to Michigan just a couple of years ago. She was with us for many years, and she came to us and had seen a 0.5K somewhere, and she was like, we need to do this. I was like, all right, you figure out how to organize it, and we'll do it. And we all worked together and figure out a way to do a 0.5K, which is literally a run around the block or a couple of blocks here.
Love that.
And what's really funny is the first year, because we run through the alley by Dutton Lanes in here, and the very first year, we didn't think anything about it. We just set up cones and let people run around. Well, you get partway through the alley at Dutton Laneson, and they've got a gigantic driveway because they have all these trucks that come and drop stuff off. So people were actually cutting through the driveway because 0.5K was too far.
Yes.
So the next year we did it, we closed off that section except for a small walkway. And then we invited, I think it was for that year, the first year, it was the Hastings Literacy Program. And we had them stand there, and if you gave them a donation, then you could use Cheater's Alley, as we call it.
That's awesome. Yes.
And so we're like, all right, if you're going to cheat, well, at least somebody gets the benefit from it then.
And I believe I won the 0.5K 2 years in a row. The non-competitive, untimed
Yes.
race. But if we all started at the same time and I got back first,
You still won.
which I did, I won.
Yeah. I think Mitch is the only one who actually like ran hard with
He
you.
tried to chase me,
Yeah.
and
So
I was running from him because he's a big dude.
are you saying you didn't stop for the chips at the halfway point? Because when we walked it, I stopped for the chips halfway and it ruined my time.
Hung
100%.
out there for a little while. Yeah.
I did not, but just as an aside, I had just come back from a half Ironman in Boulder that I did that year.
Sure.
And had done no sprint training. And when I got done, I aggravated Achilles tendonitis
Oh, no.
in my right leg, and it was like 8 months before I could run again.
Oh, no.
That's right. Hurt himself at a 0.5K.
Should have stopped with the chips.
Sacrifice for the win, though, man.
Exactly. Well, so the funny thing is, though, is that we were just had a conversation with Brittany recently because she does come back to Hastings every once in a while, and we're thinking about bringing back the 0.5K, but we're going to call it the Brittany Memorial 0.5K. And I was like, Brittany, we're going to put your face on a shirt, and it's going to say the Brittany Memorial 0.5K, and then underneath the picture it'll say, "I'm not dead yet."
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring this back to D&D because this is the whole reason we're here tonight. And Tony has been way too quiet at that end of the table for the most part.
That's the first time anybody's ever said that about me, by the way. He's really quiet.
I'm just opening the door for you.
Yeah,
man.
no,
You just
sure.
wait. So your next event, or one of your next events that you're doing down here, is you're going to start playing some D&D.
Yeah, so we've always had different groups show up and play D&D at the tap room. It's really funny because I remember early on, Dale, who's going to be one of our DMs for this event, I remember him showing up in the tap room, and he was like, "Hey, so I don't know if it'd be okay, but I have a group that plays D&D, and would it be all right if we played here?" And I was like, "Dude, yeah, come on in. Like, whatever. You can play up front, or a lot of times they actually play back here where we're currently sitting, just because it's a little bit quieter than the tap room can be."
Yep.
And so they've been doing that, and the way this idea came about is Jesse and I had just gone to one of the typical beer events where we're serving people 2 ounces at a time, and they're like, "Oh, that's a great beer," and then we never talk to them again.
Sure. Yep.
And you always hope at those events that maybe that entices people to come to your tap room, but I've done so many of them, and it always just feels like it's not creating a connection, or at least a connection that I want it to. And so we're like, what can we do? You know, like our 0.5K or things that bring people to our tap room. They seem to create more connection with others and get them more to understand what we're doing here. And so we're driving back from one of these events, and I'm like, okay, what can we do that's just a more interesting way to bring people together over beer or over just whatever beverages we make? And I thought about Tony's been leading a couple different D&D groups, and then Dale's group here, and I know a couple others, and I was like, you know what? We got a lot of people who like to do this in Hastings. What if we just tried to do something big in that arena? And so I called Tony as we're driving back. I think it was like 8 o'clock at night or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
And I'm like, "Hey, Tony, I got this idea. What if we did like a really big D&D campaign?" And I think I actually said I think maybe 5 tables, 5 different DMs, but the overarching story eventually comes together in a way that we can bring it all into everybody's part of the same thing. And he was like, I don't. Well, you go ahead.
Yeah, so Beth and I were also driving. I don't
Yeah.
remember where we were coming back from, but
Were you coming back from the same event we were at? Did you come help us on an event?
I think we were at a show at the
Oh, that's
Orpheum
right.
Theater in Omaha. We had just left another, facet of my nerdery, musical theater, and we're driving back, and I think that's when you called. And so Nathan says, "Hey, we want to do this event. We're just kind of thinking about it. Like, what would that look like?" And I'm driving the car thinking, "Oh man, that sounds like a lot of work, and I don't know who we'd get for all the DMs." And I'm like, "Man, I don't know." And so at the end of that conversation, I'm like, "Well, let me think about it. I'll get back to you." And then I just thought about it the whole drive home. Like, my wife, God bless her soul, she's trying to like have a conversation with me, and I'm just like off in la la land, and I'm thinking, okay, so if we did, okay, so and then I went from, man, that sounds like a lot of work. I don't know where we, how we would pull that off. To 10 seconds later, I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, one table could go up there, another table could sit like right here in the back space, and then I think we can put 5 tables in there, and so the next day, I think I start blowing his Facebook Messenger up with ideas, and I had just come back from an event. I went last July to Newcastle, UK, and played at D&D in a castle.
Awesome.
Was an amazing experience, and then my wife and I, for our 25th anniversary, actually went to the first ever United States hosted castle event, and so I felt like after being at that one in the UK, after talking to Nathan and thinking about it, I thought, okay, I think we can do this. But at those events, each table's completely separate, and they don't do, like, there's no, as far as I'm aware, there's no tie-in ever between any of the tables. So I thought, okay, well, how can we make that work here? And, well, then it had to be some kind of, like, karma or fate or something. Like, shortly after that, I see the trailer for the Vecna Eve of Ruin book that's come, that just came out. And I thought, okay, so I did some deep diving on the internet, some spoilers and stuff like that. And I thought, that's the framework we can work in. Vecna, the evil lich, the whispered one, or whatever you want to call him, is trying to unmake the universe and recreate it in his own image. And the players have to go find different MacGuffins, basically, to stop him. I thought we could take that idea. Each table then will get a mission to go find a specific thing, and then we can have it all come back and tie in together at the very end. And so Beth is listening to me just ramble on, like it's one of those things where I'm laying in bed you guys all play D&D. Do you all DM too, or just?
Yes.
Yep.
So have you ever had the thing where you're just like laying in bed about to fall asleep, and then you get an idea and you're like, oh man, hold on, and then I'm like, poking my wife, hey, Beth, wake up. I got an idea. She's like, oh my God. And I'm going to write this down, because otherwise I'll wake up in the morning and be like, I had the best idea. What was that? So, and then, so one of the DMs is my neighbor, Tyler. I taught him to play D&D, and then I was fortunate enough to play at the first one-shot he ever ran, which turned into a mini campaign.
Nice.
And then, so I knew Tyler right away. Neil Shepard, who is a part-time employee here.
Yep.
He's going to be one of the other DMs, and I taught his sister Laura to play D&D. Neil already knew.
She's been our DM several times for one shots.
Yeah, for
as
one
well.
shots.
That's cool.
Yeah.
In a one shot where it was a traveling band, all bards.
Oh, all bars.
Okay, we did.
Yes.
Except me, I played an Echo Knight because everybody else was in on the joke but me. So I show up.
Now the way this happened is I've got nephews who play D&D with their cousins and such all the time, and so when they come and visit, I always try to set up a one-off campaign. Like the first time we ever did it, it was my brother-in-law Tim and his oldest son Gus that we all sat around and did a campaign together that you were the DM for, and it was hilarious. Like I have a bard character that shows up in Tony's worlds, and so I usually play him. But then my nephew played a paladin for that one, and then his dad played a sorcerer who thought he was Merlin traveling backwards
He thought
through
he was
time, but he's
aging in
not.
reverse, but he's just old and senile, it turns out.
Yeah.
It was entertaining.
Nice.
But then the next time, it ended up being Gus and his brother Cal coming to visit, and so we set up a one-shot, and Laura was going to DM it, and we picked them up from Omaha. They get off the plane, we get in the car, and they're like, okay, we've thought about this. This is like the first thing they say to me. We've thought about this. We're going to do Oops All Bards, but don't tell Toady. And I was like, okay.
So they show up and they're like, oh, we're all playing bards. And right away, so I've got this Echo Knight character I've built, and right away I'm like, perfect. I'm the roadie and the head of security. Like that's his whole.
Yes.
Always wanted to sing, but just never had the chops for it. But like he's a huge music nerd, and it just ran off from there. Anyway, so Laura's little brother Neil is going to DM one of the tables, but outside of Tyler and Neil, I was like, man, we need to find some other DMs. Well, you talked about the American Outlaws. We're here watching a soccer game, and these two people show up we've never met before, Robbie and Ashley. and Ashley is an athletic trainer, I think, for the high school, and Robbie is a teacher. And we're sitting there watching soccer, and they see like the flyer that we had up, and Robbie's like, "Wait a minute, you guys are gonna play a D&D campaign here?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Do you play?" He's like, "Oh man, I play, I DM, I whatever." And so we start talking, and after about 10 minutes talking to the guy, I'm like, "Hey, do you want to DM a table?" Like, I feel like that would be a pretty solid choice there. And he's like, "Okay, well," he says, have you thought about session 0 yet?" I'm like, "Man, I'm just trying to get the thing organized." He's like, "I got a PowerPoint for session 0 all ready to go." And he pulls it up on his drive, and I went, "Congratulations, you're hired for nothing." Like, I mean, nobody, none of us are getting paid.
He set up our Discord.
Yeah.
He's done everything.
Yes.
He's just like, "I'll take care of it. It's done." And I'm like, "Okay."
Perfect. And then Dale, who's gonna, I think, DM your table.
Yeah.
Jody Barr, who works here.
It's her nephew-in-law.
Yes. Yep.
So it's her niece's husband.
Yep.
Which is hilarious because Jody's not that old.
No. So Jody gives me Dale's phone number and says, "Hey, why don't you text him and see if he'll do it?" So Dale's never met me before, except maybe seeing me in passing here. I'm like, "Hey, you want to DM a table at this thing we're gonna do?" And he's like, "Who are you?" So he agrees to it. We chat a little bit. He agrees to it, and then that night that we opened registration, the next night we came down here to have like a DM, like convene the writers' room, if you will, to talk about a few things and to try and draft tables. How are we going to put everybody at the table? And we had 2 openings left, and we didn't want to finalize the tables without giving it a few minutes. So somebody's like, "Well, geez, we're plugged into their projector system here, and we got the spreadsheet up," and somebody's like, "Throw on YouTube, and let's just watch some stuff for a little bit." And he goes to get on it, and somebody says, "Hey, have you ever heard the It Wasn't Me barbershop quartet version?" And everybody's like, "Oh, yeah, I love that. Let's watch that." So 5 people, we've never sat in a room together at the same time watching, I don't remember what the name of that group is, but the barbershop quartet of It Wasn't Me. And we're all like, "Oh, yeah, we've all seen this before." And I'm like, I don't know how we did it, but we put the exact right group of nerds together accidentally, and here we are. Nice. So I think we've got some really great DMs, and I think we're going to have just an absolute blast of a time, and we're gonna learn so much this year, I think.
And I think so as we were all talking about this, we're talking about like everybody who's listening knows what we're doing. We should probably start with, so this is going to be a 6-month campaign.
Yeah.
It's only one Thursday a month. But the idea is it's a 6-month campaign, a thing to kind of get everybody through the winter. Like you talk about community initiatives. One of the other things we do is we run a cribbage league during the winter, just because it's every Sunday we get together and play cards, and everybody gets to hang out, and it makes winter go by so much faster. Yeah. So we're like, what can we do that we're all going to be inside, and we can all do something that will just make winter go by quickly.
Sure.
And this was just another way of doing that. So it's going to be a 6-month D&D campaign, one night a month, and there's going to be a lot of sort of extra little things.
And Phil, you were playing in this, right?
I got in. Yes, I did.
Which is why we can't talk about too many of these.
I know, I'm sorry.
Extra things.
I hovered over that registration league, so I was waiting.
Yeah.
So that raises a question, though. So it didn't quite work out with Brett and I to join, so we're just happy to help promote for sure. But Phil got in. And Phil, what was the thing that was most enticing to you? Because the 3 of us have played D&D now for 4 years. I don't even remember now. But this is like your first foray into not playing with our normal group. What was enticing about doing this?
Oh, yeah, in quite a while. I haven't played with another group. Well, a couple of reasons. A, beer.
Cheers.
It's a big one. Cheers. Secondly, the concept of like multiple tables coming together into kind of a larger campaign, and then also getting to meet other players that I don't normally play with and that don't know my play style. Like, it'll be fun, I think, to experience that. That's what I was looking forward to.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun dynamic.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be opportunity because of the way we've set things up, and this is Tony and Laura and everybody kind of coming together, coming up with ideas. But, the bar area in the tap room, that's going to be the tavern at the end of time. So Laura's going to be bartending, but she's going to be bartending in character.
Nice.
Which is going to be funny to see how that works for our normal patrons.
She already told me that she doesn't think she'll be able to code switch in her brain fast enough.
Yeah, I know.
So she's been workshopping voices. So everybody's just gonna get the crazy old witch at the bar. Like, so if you're just like on your way through town, never been at First Street before, let's stop in and have a beer. Try this place. You're gonna walk into Laura in costume doing
Laura
like,
being Muriel.
hello,
You may get
dearies,
Muriel
what
instead
brings
of
you in
Laura.
from the cold? You know, like yeah.
Yes.
And if you know Laura at all, she goes. There's no halfway with Laura about anything, and so she's going to go full send on it, I'm sure, and it's going to be great. And that was one of the things, we didn't, we thought, okay, well, we can tie all the tables together with a story, but then how do you there's no time for interaction. Like,
Sure.
like somebody at your table can't come over to somebody at my table and like role play a character with them, but Endless is I think the name Laura settled on is Endless, the Endless Tavern.
Okay.
She came up with this idea. So basically, when you walk through the back door here and you go up to the bar there, suddenly your character now, the meta of the whole thing is that, if you go up in character and you can talk to other players as if they're their characters, that's a place where you can go and while you're getting a beer, you can, hey, what's going on at your table? You guys, how can is there some way we can help? Like, how do we do that? And basically, Laura's got like a reward system. So the more in character you are, she will reward that with, tokens or baubles. The other day she printed off, I think it's 40-some pages of magic item cards.
Yeah.
Ooh,
That she's like, I gotta go get laminate. I gotta go get laminate sheets. I'm like, where are you gonna find that many? Like, you're gonna clean Walmart out. But so she's got some of that stuff that's gonna be going on. So I think it'll be a really fun. Extra sort of interaction, like that. So one of the, when I was at D&D in a castle, one of the things I took away from that was we'd have our play sessions, and then they had a bar at the castle, and then that's where everybody convened in the evenings to talk about, like, so you talk to somebody from another table, you'd be like, so what's going on at your table? Like, well, and it's just depending on who your DM is, it's just the various levels of psychic trauma they're creating, for these people, right? And there was one other group that we seemed to be on the same schedule with, and I felt like I was part of two adventures because we'd get done with our adventure and we'd all like race to the bar to be like, so what happened at your table today? Oh my gosh. And then you'd be like, what happened at yours? And I think we can do that, here, but like in real time as you walk up to get another drink. And like I said, she's got some ways to, that she's going to try and incentivize that for you.
I love that because in my limited experience with playing in one shots, it's so hard to wrap your mind around a character and like dive into who they are. Like, we're getting to that in our big campaign that we just picked back up. We're now in year 3 of that one. I finally feel like I can be my character, but in a one shot, it's just so hard because you haven't spent any time with that. So it's like being able to pick that up from the table and take it out of the room is a fan-freaking-tastic idea, and I love that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I like I said, I think we either accidentally or because of fate put together the right group of people to come up with this. And so, yeah, what my hope is that for people who maybe are new to this, who've never done it before, or are maybe a little nervous about doing funny voices or role-playing a character in front of other people, think about it more like immersion therapy.
Sure.
And if we incentivize that, and if everybody's doing it, then everybody hopefully will feel more comfortable, to do that kind of thing.
Totally.
So,
You're going to have a whole room full of nerds. So it's a safe space.
yeah,
exactly.
100%.
Yes.
And one of the things that, and maybe this is what you're going to say, but one of the things about First Street that I love is, and I've heard Nathan say this before, this is the island of misfit toys, where like you said, you got a cribbage league, but then you'll have, you did a pickleball tournament out there once,
tournament.
right?
Yep.
And some of those folks were serious.
Oh my God.
Like it was,
Watch out for those pickleball players.
like it was.
You're seriously playing on the street where I laid out tape to define the parameters of the court, and the court is curved because you're on the street, and they're all super serious about it. I'm like, this is weird, man.
But then, at the same time, then you can have, we're going to play a D&D campaign. Like, I feel like First Street is a place that everybody can find, everybody can find a seat here,
We've always, like Jesse and I, my wife and I, have always, we always have wanted to create our own cheers, and that's what this is.
Yep.
This is the place where everybody can hang out and just be whoever they are, and that's cool. That's the whole idea. Like the island of misfit toys. That's always my favorite line, just because we're all quirky in all kinds of ways. And there's space for all of us to be that way here, you know? Some of my favorite moments are people who wouldn't necessarily normally be comfortable out hanging out in a tap room someplace. We've got so many people who come to our tap room that I don't know, if we were just a regular bar somewhere else, I don't think they'd be here.
Sure.
And I love it because it makes everything so much more interesting and so much more fun.
So I guess the question I have is, without having done this yet, still, I mean, it's not here.
Yeah.
But it was received extremely well. Do you plan to do this again next year?
Yeah, our hope is to make it a seasonal thing. So we'll do it each year. Obviously, storylines will change. And, I mean, so for people listening, we sold this out in 27 hours, which we only had 30 spots. And that it was kept intentionally small for a big event. Because we weren't sure, one, the interest, and then two, how to manage it. So this year, I think there'll be a lot of learning. I think
For sure.
the group that we've brought together has already brought together so many cool ideas that I think go above and beyond a normal D&D campaign. Which, I mean, so my D&D experience, I played when I was, in middle school, and I came back to it later in life, mainly through Tony's nerdery.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And so I show up occasionally in his world, but worlds, I guess. But yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity, and there's way more people who play D&D than we know. And it's just everybody's kind of come out of the woodwork, and it's been really cool. And the thing I love about D&D, and the thing that I love that my nephews and my niece are all into it, is and I think Tony often described it this way, it's shared storytelling. It's people coming up with stories on the fly. And that's so neat because it's people using their imaginations. It's them finding ways to express themselves that doesn't involve a screen. And it is nothing passive about D&D. You are an active participant.
Yep, totally.
And that's super cool.
But at the same time, if you're a little more introverted, you can totally be this, the character that doesn't say much but walks softly but carries a big stick. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a
Right.
barbarian and I'm not very smart, so I'm just here for the, the beat down. And so you can totally, there's a place for you there if you want to. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, but one of the things that I really like about D&D, and I know we're getting a little off the beaten path here, but one of the things I love about D&D is, and I heard somebody describe this, was if there's a group of people and you're trying to, like real people, and you're trying to understand maybe their viewpoint, then create a D&D character and play that viewpoint. And suddenly you find yourself, oh, hey, it's not a perfect way to learn about somebody else's experience, but it is a way to gain a viewpoint, for something like that. And, I played a Warforged paladin once, and Turk was the name, and Turk was non-gendered because he's a machine. And I'm doing it now. I'm gendering him again. But like when I would play that character, and people would be like, "Well, what does he think?" And I'd be like, "Point of order. My creator cared too much about me to saddle me with the biological imperatives of you squishing meat sacks. So, like, I'm not a he." And then but it was a way to try and gain perspective on something. And I think D&D is great. I heard a story from somebody that they were playing with somebody who had a really bad stutter, but they could sing without stuttering. But they wanted to play D&D, and so they created a bard character who could only sing, and they said she was awesome, and it was just a way to, it was inclusive and a way to include that person. Like going back to community, D&D is a great way to bring people together, and the way we're going to do it here, have a beer, tell a story together, maybe learn something about ourselves and each other. Totally. And yes, I'm hoping to continue doing it as years go on, but who knows?
Right, yeah, you never know.
I mean, when we were first putting this together, it was like, do you think we could get 30 people who would want to do this? And then by the end of it, we were like, oh God, 30's not enough.
Right.
And then we're like, you know what? It's year one.
Yeah.
Let's just see how this goes. We're all going to learn a lot. And hopefully people want to come back and do it again. And if there are more people beyond the people who want to come back, then great. We've got ideas on how to expand on that. but we've got a long way to go before we even think about that.
I keep doing that. I keep thinking about stuff. Well, we'll do this, and I'm like, that's step 95. We're on step 3 right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, calm down, Tony. Like, that's just the way my brain works. I'm already running off on my own direction again. So.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, it gives me goosebumps just to play a very small part of this, and I wish you nothing but the most success in this because I think it's going to be awesome. So
Yeah, I've got high hopes. I think we've got a fun group of people who've signed up, and again, it's just going to be fun to be here on those Thursday nights. I think.
for sure, yeah.
So.
All right, so let's come back to the Assumption Saison. And normally at this point in the show, we're coming up with beer names and taverns for everybody. But since we're in a little bit different setting this time, Nathan, let's. I want you to give your beer an alignment, and we'll have a little interesting discussion about whether the rest of us agree or not.
Well, okay, so you're talking about the Assumption Saison in particular.
Yes.
As you said, it is an easy drinking beer, but at the same time, there is a funk to it because it is a Belgian style. So I would go with chaotic neutral.
I agree with that. I was thinking it had to be chaotic too,
Yeah.
actually.
I was between chaotic good and chaotic neutral because it is delicious as my cup is empty.
I was thinking more on the lawful good side,
Oh,
like with the floral notes and like the smooth, like a little bit of a bite of the ginger, like keeping it fresh.
all right.
Sure, yeah.
Tony?
Man, I don't know. I was going to say chaotic good also, just because if you're talking about, a farmhouse beer, but it does have it's got the floral notes.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't Belgian beers, don't they do a lot of wild?
Yes.
This one
Ooh.
isn't,
And that's
but
part of
don't
the
they do a lot
chaos
of
for me,
wild
too.
yeast kind of thing? So, I mean, that just describes you're just opening up to the random events of the
Oh,
universe.
there's a train going
Yeah,
by.
there's-
One of the joys of First
You're required to play a snippet of Johnny Cash right now. Okay?
Okay.
Folsom Prison.
So but it's for the masses to feed the farm workers. So that sounds like chaotic good to me.
Yeah, I definitely like the chaos part of it, mainly because in every one of my Belgian style beers, I will start them at a specific temperature, but the thing that's fun about a Belgian style beer is the yeast that you're using loves to get weird on you. And so I'll start it at a certain temperature, and then after the first 2 days, I'll raise it, and then I'll raise it again, and I'll let it go as hot as it wants to get, because that's when you get the really interesting esters that come out of what the yeast is doing.
Sure. Yeah.
So there is an element of chaos to brewing Belgian style beers, and I love that aspect of it because it's never going to be exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's going to be within parameters, but there's always going to be a little possibility of something weird happening. And
Different.
yeah,
You roll the dice.
Literally.
You need to roll on the wild magic table for that, or
we've got a Tripel brewing right now, and it's currently jumped up to about 73 degrees, which for this style of beer is getting pretty warm, and that's where just a lot of magic happens with a Belgian beer. Like, there's so many interesting things that can happen.
I'm excited to try that.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
We'll be back in a little while.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this before, but we'd love to have you guys back for one of the nights when we're playing.
Sure. Yep.
I think it'd be a lot of fun, either after the campaign is done, or maybe beforehand, just pulling some people together who are playing and interview them.
True. I think that would be great.
Yeah.
to
Oh,
yeah.
debrief with everybody would be really cool.
I mean, you got one player already.
That's true. Yeah.
My opinion doesn't matter.
get the-
People don't want to hear from me. So.
That's just one table. There's
Oh
other
yeah,
tables.
that's true.
I know. It's going to be really fun to see what kind of interaction happens and just where people go with it.
Sure.
I think that's the exciting thing about it. We have no idea where this is going to go. We have a small idea of where this is.
we
gonna
have
go. An outline.
we have 11% of a plan of
plan.
Well, what's great is seeing the different DM styles. Like, I'm a very just like, I write an outline, and it's like I got to get from point A to point Z, and I leave a lot of space in the middle to just see kind of what happens. And some other folks are like, oh, I've spent all day writing, I'm ready for if they do this and if they do this, and I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not.
Different styles.
Yeah, 100% different styles. So that's going to be super fun. And we have so many great ideas. you guys need to come back when it's all done, and we
Yes.
even if you don't record it, we'll just
Absolutely.
nerd out about it.
I'm
like,
down for that.
Headed into the last session when you're finally like, I love it when a plan comes together.
Yeah.
Or I'm like, well, that didn't work. It's fine. We'll roll with it. The giant meteor forms in the sky.
Next thing we want to do, and this is pretty typical on our opening crack episodes, is we assign a challenge rating to a beer. So it's a scale from 1 to 20, which is your typical challenge rating in D&D, as we all know at this table. 1 on the one end is going to be like cream ales, maybe your Bud Lights and stuff if you want to go that far. On the other end, double IPAs, imperial stouts, things like that. So this is coming from the viewpoint of somebody just picking up this beer. What do you think the challenge rating would be? And whoever wants to kick us off can go first.
I would say for maybe someone that is not well versed in the craft beer realm, if they were going to pick this up and try it, I still feel like it's super approachable. It has a good yeast flavor, so that would kind of depend on the drinker, I think.
Yeah.
But I would probably put it around, I feel like 9, 10-ish. Like, it's pretty approachable, but
I was going to go 11. Just like it's got that little bit of craft beer-ness to it that you kind of have to understand you're drinking a craft beer, but the flavors in it are not what you would normally think of when you think craft beer. It's floral and ginger. Like those are really approachable for somebody who doesn't necessarily drink craft beer.
yeah, we've tried some wild flavors. This doesn't pack one of those. Like, it wouldn't turn someone off because of kind of an out-there flavor. These are very pleasant.
Yeah.
And this, for the record, for you guys, this is not good or bad. Like,
No,
Yes.
no.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so this
correct.
is
About-
like all beers are good. It's just where does it fall on?
Well, I will say, I think, especially in Nebraska, Belgian beers seem to be more difficult for people to approach, mainly because they just don't know what they are.
Sure.
And it is a different flavor profile. I mean, I've never really had a Belgian beer that tasted like anything like an IPA or a pale ale or just one of the more standard styles. So it is something that generally seems to be a little tougher for the general public to approach. So I would put it more like a 13 or so. Because I agree the flavor profiles are pretty nice and approachable, but at the same time, that funkiness just seems to be hard for people.
The style.
Yeah, which I don't get because I think they're some of the most amazing beers.
Sure.
The name of the style too, Saison. It's kind of a
And this sounds
Can
French.
scare people
scary
off.
word.
It's like if this was a dark beer, like I could just see people going, no, not for me.
Right.
That's just that mental block. For
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which we have fought that so much, and it's really funny just because I've got to tell the side stories. We love tangents in D&D, right?
Right.
So when we first opened, we only had 2 beers on tap, and I think I told you guys this story when you came through before. We had our Queen City Kolsch, which it was just batch number 1 because it wasn't quite my Kolsch at the time, and our Back Alley Porter, which is everything roasty and delicious in the world. And I really thought, because we're in Nebraska, that the Kolsch would be like the number 1 hit, but no. Back Alley Porter, across the board. And I would say for the first 3 or 4 years that we were open, that was my number 1 selling beer. But we still had that where people would be like, "Oh no, I don't do dark beers," and I would just be like, "Oh, okay. Well, do you drink coffee?" And they were like, "Well, yeah, I drink coffee." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Do you like chocolate?" And they're like, "Of course I like chocolate." I'm like, "Well, okay." And I pour a little and I hand it to them. I'm like, "Stop looking at the color and taste it." And they were like, "Oh, this is really good." And I'm like, "Yeah,
This is
stop
actually
judging
really
the
tasty.
beer." Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's my favorite backhanded compliment. Oh, this is actually good. I'm like, I'm really glad your expectations were nice and low. But I always tell everybody, don't judge a beer on its color. If you don't like a particular style of beer, it's not the style you don't like. You just haven't met the right one yet.
Sure. Yep.
Because every brewer brews differently. Trevor at Thunderhead, when I was first getting started, he gave me so much great advice, and he was such a good friend to us, and still is. That's why he's part of our farmhouse vet. He was like, "Man, I will give you my peach wheat recipe. I will give it to you, because when you brew it, it will not taste like what I brew."
Sure. Yep.
Because every brewer has a different approach. We all have different styles of brewing. I've always brewed, my popular blonde is a coffee blonde ale. I've brewed that since we opened. And then like 2 or 3 years ago, all of a sudden everybody was like, I've got to do a coffee blonde. And everybody started brewing them. And so I had so many Nebraska brewers reach out and were like, so this coffee thing, how do you do that? And I was like, oh, well, here's what you do. And I just, I told them. Because I was like, you're not going to brew it the same way I do. Your beer's going to be different than mine. Yep. And that's fun.
Community, even within the beer community.
Oh, I have said repeatedly, I don't think I would, I grew up in Orlando, Florida. I went to school in Nashville, and I stayed there for about 15 years. It's where I met my wife, and she's originally from this area. And that's how I landed back here, just because everybody always goes, why are you here? So we came to Hastings. We had always joked when we were living in Nashville that if for some reason we were to move to Nebraska, that we would move to Hastings. Well, 9 years ago, we had a reason to move. And I worked as doing data architecture and data science at the time, so I was a programmer. Didn't matter where I lived, just as long as I got my work done, right? So we looked in Omaha and we looked in Kansas City because both had really large tech communities at the time, and just nothing lined up. Nothing fit. And it was like, well, we always said Hastings, and everything lined up. And we moved here, and within a month I was like, yes, I love this. And I also thought, what's missing here? It's a brewery.
Right. Yeah.
There hadn't been a brewery here since since Prohibition. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is something that I could add to our community. And it didn't work out for a long time. I was just programming and brewing in my garage and having fun. And then all of a sudden, 2015, things lined up. This building came available for sale. It was the first building we ever wanted. And everything just lined up, and it worked out. And that led to what we're doing here, And I had a point to all this, and I'm trying to remember what it was.
Community.
Yeah, there we go.
Community.
Yes. So the tangent went too far. Well, being a Nebraska brewer is brilliant because we are a community. The Guild, we are the Nebraska Craft Brewers Guild. We all love working together. We love each other's beers. It is so much fun to trade ideas. Most people don't get to see it, but when you go to those beer events where you're drinking 2 ounces at a time, the brewers are often walking to each other's tables with little bottles going, hey, try this. It's all the stuff we're working on,
Sure.
and we're just sharing ideas back and forth. It's so much fun to be a brewer in Nebraska because, yeah, we're each other's competition, but craft brewing in Nebraska makes up less than 4% of all the beer sold in Nebraska.
Sure.
There's a lot of beer sold in Nebraska, and we're less than 4%.
That's insane.
That's crazy.
So anytime any brewer that is making beer within the state does better, we all do better. It's a great thing for us.
For sure.
So it's like being in a D&D campaign, except we all are brewers.
Oops, all brewers.
Oops, all brewers.
Tony, challenge rating.
Oh my God, I forgot. Steer
We
the
just
ship.
skipped right over it.
Steer the ship back to Riddlin Bay. I was going to go with 15, and the reason for that is when I try one of Nathan's beers, I always think of my brother, who I love very much, but Josh, he doesn't drink a lot, but when he does, he's a Bud Light guy, and about the time you put that in front of him, he's gonna taste it, and that floral bouquet, which I think is fantastic. It's interesting. I love it. Like Nathan said, it's a nice rounded flavor. That is gonna freak him out hard, and so that's why I'm thinking that's a little more on that.
Sure.
On that end. And one's got to always, I'm the Price is Right guy here. What was the highest bid? No, I'm going to go up over on that.
There you go.
So that's
Sure.
Well, and that's why I would love to see more breweries. Like when we make a lot of Belgians, but they don't sell the way our other beers do because people don't know what they are. And they can be scared of them.
Sure.
But they're beautiful. They're wonderful beers, and they're the kind of beer where you can sit and savor it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're like any craft beer, some more than others, but most craft beers are the kind of beers where as you're drinking it, as it's getting more towards room temperature, it's actually opening up. It's actually allowing for more flavor to be perceived and to be enjoyed. I love that. I love that kind of thing in a beer. So
I think after listening to all of you, I have bounced around in my head with like 5 different numbers. But I'm gonna,
This is why we normally make Ross
go first. Yes, go with my gut. I'm gonna give this like a 9. I love this beer. I could drink 3 more of these at no problem.
All right.
But I think this is gonna be kind of weird. But if you're the kind of person that likes like blue cheese, like you like that funky taste, you would love this beer. Just because it's like that funk is not foreign to you at all. And I love it. I hate blue cheese, but I like this. Different kind of funk, of course. But I mean, if it's just you have one of those palates where you like interesting things, this is a wonderful beer for that kind of person.
You know, we haven't done this in a long time, but we did. One of my buddies was one of the managers at the Hy-Vee in Grand Island, and for a couple of years there, we were able to do this beer and cheese pairing, and it was super interesting because we would take 2 cheeses for each beer.
Sure.
And what it really helped illustrate was how your perception of flavor changes. So you'd eat one cheese and then try it with the beer. We'd have them cleanse their palates with either a pretzel or something. Then you'd eat the other cheese and try the same beer, and it would be a completely different experience.
Yeah.
And it was so cool and so fun to do it that way.
Yeah.
Just because it's, you know, I love food, I love beer.
Same.
It's like the different pairings, the combinations are so phenomenal, and just so many different things you can do with it.
Sure. Okay. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, guys?
Are we supposed to name a tavern?
Oh, we were going to skip that for this one. Do you want to name
I mean,
a tavern
I don't
for this?
know.
And they're serving it at Endless.
That's
right?
true.
Yeah,
We've already
I mean,
got
anyways, I feel like we've already.
All right, never mind.
Can
What are you
I?
going to call it at Endless?
What?
What are you going to call the beer at Endless?
So I asked Laura, or I told Laura, I guess, I said, you know what you should do is you should just make little things to put over the names and just rename all of them. And then she said, I'm not going to be able to switch voices. I'm definitely not going to be able to switch that in my head. And I was like, oh, I can see how that would be something. But given beer's challenge ratings, now I'm thinking I got to create a whole series of monsters for my table that all have like beer-related names now.
Oh,
Give each one like is the back alley porter, you know, Asaurus. Is that
I'll see now. I was expecting
that was? I'm way better at improv than that most of the time.
I was thinking
that
like
was
a
not my
dark and
best work.
swarthy kind of, because that's a dark, rich beer that just be like, hey,
The Back Alley Beholder.
The back,
Back Alley Beholder. Oh my God, yes.
Yes,
I love that.
stealing that.
Write that down.
Back alley beholder. Anyway, so now that's what I'm thinking. So that'll be my obsession the rest of the week now. I'll be like,
Phil, we need you to keep track of these and like let us know.
Oh,
Yes, please.
absolutely. We'll live in Discord on those nights.
Yes. Well, thank you guys for coming on the show. We
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
appreciate it. Hopefully, this gives your players and all of our listeners a little insight into what's going on here in Hastings.
And where can we learn more about the campaign in general and stay up to date with how the campaign is progressing?
hold on, I'm typing back alley beholder. I can only do one thing at a time.
there's a Facebook page called The Dungeon at First Street that
Which sounded like a great idea when so First Street D&D was already taken somewhere. First Street Dungeons and Dragons was already taken, couldn't get it. So the Dungeon at First Street, I got that one, and then we lost the Instagram page we had for it because apparently it didn't meet their terms of service, and the only thing I can figure is that they weren't quite sure what that meant.
This is not a BDSM podcast.
Yeah.
I promise you right
That's
now.
a great Dungeons and Daddies reference, though. But yeah, it's the Dungeon at First Street, the Dungeon at First Street, all one word on Facebook, and my wife teaches media arts at Central Community College, so I've already put it on her to pictures, video from the campaign
Nice.
night.
Yeah.
We're gonna try and share a bunch of
We-
that.
we're gonna try and
Ross and I
keep
are excited.
updating.
Yes, it's going to be.
Outside of the room, yeah, we want to keep up to date with these campaigns. And Nathan, where can we learn more about First Street? Where can we find you guys?
FirstStreetBrewing.com, or we're on all the socials as First Street Brewing Company. Cool. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I don't really do a lot on Twitter. I mainly appreciate what other people do on Twitter. But we do a lot of stuff on Instagram and on Facebook. And, we're always trying different things. So you never know what you'll find.
Yep. Cool. All right. That's going to do it for this episode of The Opening Crack. Stay tuned for more beer reviews in the future. You can check out our regular show, Bards and Barrels, anywhere podcasts can be found. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, at Bards and Barrels. Until next time, may your dice be hot and your beer be cold.